All right, take two. Sorry, I just tried this the first time and it didn't work out, so we're going to do this again. All right, welcome back. Hope your spring break was reasonably good, as good as it could have been. And just to do a quick recap of what the heck we talked about 2 weeks ago. Um, Before we took a break, we were talking about evolution. And the thing about evolution is that it's all about individuals having adaptations that help them survive and reproduce so they can have a kid and pass on their genes. And so if they're well adapted and they can reproduce, and that's great. And by reproducing, individuals are going to change from one generation to the next. And over time, that means that the population of the organism is going to evolve, okay? Because you keep surviving, you keep reproducing, and random mutations will happen every time you're born to, over time, create small changes that develop and develop and develop. So what we're going to focus on this week is the evidence for why we think evolution is a viable explanation for life and how it changes. So I'm going to go back up here. This is one of my favorite shots. This is a dude scuba diving and he's hanging out with a whale. But what I've highlighted here is the guy's arms, okay? And the thing about this guy's arms is that they show us something that is very important. And the arm that you have on you and that this guy has on him has the exact same bones and bone structure that a whale has in its pectoral fin. So you have a shoulder blade, you have the humerus, you have a radius and an ulna, and then you have the carpals, the metacarpals, and then you have the phalanges, which are your finger bones right here. And a whale actually has, most of them have 4, but some do still have 5 phalange bones in their fin, the same number as you have for your fingers and your thumb. And the other thing about a whale is remember that they're mammals and their fossil record shows us that they once walked. They used to have a hind set of legs. And over time, they developed to spend more time in the water because they were more adapted to that. And so all that's left of that hind leg is now a little pelvic bone that doesn't do anything. But the other thing that's in common about the whale is although our heads aren't that big, we do have a rib cage like the whale does. We also have a spinal column that goes back to our pelvis and our legs. And then the whale obviously doesn't have legs anymore, and instead it has a fin that we do not have. So although we're different, we do have similar structures. And so what we're going to talk about today is among the many forms of evidence, we're just going to focus on one for today, and that's common bone structures between different types of organisms. So we're going to skip all this stuff. What this is that I'm skipping is an explanation for how the heck life got here in the first place. I used to teach this, and I still would under different circumstances, but for now I'm just going to skip it because we have 18 days of school left. That said, if you're really curious and you're like, wait a minute, how did we get here? Then I will do a separate video and leave this for you so you can check it out. But yeah, it's optional. So, and I'm not going to worry about this yet either. So we keep going down, and basically, how do we know that evolution's a viable thing? Well, here's our forms of evidence. We got fossils, we got bones, we got protein and DNA sequences, and then we got something called vestigial structures. And the vestigial structures I'm actually going to tie in today, but first we're going to focus on the bones. So anyway, we go down, and boom! All right, here's anatomy. So anatomy is the construction of our bodies, okay? Point is that we have 3 different types of structures. 2 of them are mentioned here. The first one is that we have something called homologous structures. Homologous structures are structures that are similar because they were passed down from a common ancestor, okay? So it's something that we got that we share with another type of organism. For example, the bones in the human arm and the whale fin. And why do we both have those? Because we came from a common point once upon a time. That means we have a common ancestor. So if we have the whale, And then we have the human. That means that we came from a common point, okay? And for that reason, once upon a time, a common ancestor gave us the rib cage that we both have, ribs. The bones in the arms and the fingers, fingers. And the hip bone for the whale that doesn't do anything. Okay, so more on homologous structures. Here we go. So here's the bones in the human arm. Here's the humerus, radius, and ulna. You can see that they're different sizes, but they're in the same arrangement. Okay, radius on the left, ulna's on the right. And then you have the carpals, which is your wrist. The whale has a wrist as well. The metacarpals, which are like the four fingers. Four as in F-O-R-E, like your forearm. And then you have the actual fingers, which are basically down from your knuckles, okay? So these are your phalanges. So a human's got 5 phalanges shown in blue, and how many does a whale have? Well, whales got, in this case, 4. Some of them do have 5. It depends on the species of whale that you're looking at. And then we look at a cat. So those of you who have a household cat or dog are going to get a kick out of this. They have the exact same bone structure in their legs as we do in our arms. Now, if you are like thinking, well, wait a minute, Mr. Becker, why does my cat have a backwards knee? And then you draw your cat's leg, okay? And the cat kind of sits like this, paw, and then it's got that weird leg thing going on, okay? Well, okay, you got a good point, but there's one problem with your point, if that's what you're thinking, and I thought this once upon a time. That's not a knee. That's the cat's heel. So if you have a cat or a dog, they have the same bone structure you have in your leg, except the bones are different lengths. So they have the toes, okay? So we have our toes. Now, some dogs or cats are going to have like kind of 4 phalanges, which are the same name for your toe bones, okay? And then they also might have kind of another one way up here. Depends. Check it out. But if you look at the bone structure, you have the phalanges, then you have the arch of your foot, and then this is the heel or the calcaneus of your cat or your dog. That's not a knee. And then, well, does your dog or cat have a knee then? Well, yeah, it does. It's way up here. So they have a longer tibia and fibula, which are our lower leg, okay, which would be like, this is like the cat's shin, okay? And then here's the knee way up here, and then it has a very, very short femur, whereas we have a long femur. And then its hip bone is right here. So they have the exact same bone structure that we do. It's just a little bit of a different proportion. Then a bat's wing is actually made up of the same bones that we have in our arms. Okay, so you can see by the color coding and the arrangement that these are all the same bones in the same order, in the same spot. They're just different lengths. And these are called homologous structures because we all have the same common structure because we came from a common ancestor. We got these from common descent, meaning that once upon a time, we all shared an ancestor that had this same bone structure that we all got. Okay? So anyway, well, that's structure type number 1. This is structure type number 2. This is called analogous structures. The thing about analogous structures is it's much different, and here's why. You see that these are bones, okay? These yellow bones are all attached together. Well, if we go to, and this is a pterodactyl wing. No, pterodactyls are dead. Okay? And then if we go onward, okay, we have, in this case, we have, a bird's wing, okay? And so a bird has different bone arrangements. It's got the yellow bones all in an arrangement like that, but the green ones are next to each other and they're horizontal, okay? And then we have the orange bone that's connected this way. So it's a different arrangement compared to the one on the left. And then in this case, they're somewhat similar, but then these branch off in a different way, okay? So there's a bat. And then here, we have an insect wing, but the insect wing doesn't even have any bones. So what's the point? The point is that while there's some similar bones in here, they don't have a common arrangement like we did up above. And so these are called analogous structures. And what this means is that while these structures all do the same thing, they are not built the same way. And what that tells us is these structures did not come from a common point. So these guys didn't get their wings from a common ancestor. That's what that means. Okay? So, well, what is this? How do I remember the differences between these two? Here's the short version. Short version is this. Homologous is common structure and possibly a different function. And what I mean by that is, well, why would they have a different use? Well, they don't necessarily. Humans and cats have similar functions, but we don't walk on our hands anymore. We also do not have a fin. While we have the same bones as the whale does, we do not use our arm as a fin per se. And we also can't fly. So they have possibly different functions, even though they're built from the same bones. However, for an analogous structure, you have the same purpose. What do we all do? We fly. So same purpose, but different build. So you're not built the same way. And why aren't you built the same way? Because you didn't get your wings from the same point. Okay? Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to our last type of structure, which is vestigial. Vestigial is basically structures that we don't have anymore, but we used to have. And so it's a little remnant of something that we used to have. And an example of this is how the whale has its little hip bone, but it doesn't do anything. Why? Does it have that bone there in the first place? Because it used to have a set of legs that it doesn't have anymore. And we have some structures like that as well. For example, you have a tailbone. Your tailbone is there because a common ancestor that we share between us and primates had a tail. And so we no longer have a tail, but we still have that bone left from when we did once upon a time. And over generations, the bones have stopped growing because we have had random mutations that tell us that we don't really need a tail to survive. So we continue to reproduce even though we don't have a tail. And over time, those bones just don't grow. We also have an appendix. So an appendix doesn't really serve a function, but it's there. We think it might have helped with filtering out toxins with the liver, but there's other rationale behind why we had an appendix as well. I have had mine removed, and the funny thing about an appendix is if it gets infected, it's going to blow up, meaning it's going to rupture and spread infected tissue all over your body, which could eventually kill you. So it's your little self-destruct button if it gets infected, so watch that. Which is what happened to me, although it didn't blow up. I caught it beforehand. Wisdom teeth. If you have wisdom teeth, these are an extra set of molars that we don't need anymore. And our ancestors used to have these because we used to, hunt and gather our food and eat tougher stuff. Now we just go to the supermarket. So if the wisdom teeth don't grow in ever, then, it's fine. But the fact that some people still have these is a vestigial structure. So some people are born without wisdom teeth, which means that they're technically evolutionarily more advanced than somebody who has them. I've also had those removed. Tonsils. Tonsils, we don't need those either, but they still grow in. So there's also another example that's a little bit fun. Is that in here? I don't think it's in here. Oh, it looks like it's not in here. You actually have the remnant of a third eyelid. And let me show you what that is. So your remnant of a third eyelid, if you look in the mirror, you're going to look at your eye, and you're going to see that there's this little red tissue here. If this is your eyeball, there's your pupil, there's a little red tissue. That is the remnant of a third eyelid that if I highlight this, the eyelid used to come across your eye going that way. But we don't need that anymore, okay? The other thing is a lot of people think that's your tear duct. That's not your tear duct. Your tear duct is if you were to pull your eyelid down and kind of fold it towards you, you'll see that on the inside of it, there's a little dot there. And that dot is where tears actually come out. So that little dot is where the tears are expelled from your eyes. That's your tear duct. But this part right here is the remnant of a third eyelid. So that is actually a vestigial structure as well. So anyway, we're just going to practice identifying different types of structures for today. And feel free to email me if you have any questions. Hope that was helpful.